Hello, my name is Michelle Lister, and this is my interpersonal communication project. You would not believe how much problems I have had trying to get my communication project successfully completed with volume. The first go around, my volume was missing, and so that would really have put a damper on my ability to communicate this project with you. So please bear with me as I get started on this journey with the interpersonal communication project. Next slide. Introduction. I'd like to start off with a quote. According to Stewart, communication is best viewed as a continuous, complex, and collaborative process of verbal and nonverbal meaning making, found on page 15. Next slide. This is the introduction. Continued. Interpersonal communication is a subset of general processes. A particular kind or type of communication. Communication is an ongoing process that basically will continue whether we are here to see it or not. Meaning making has been going on long before we even existed. It's where we exist and live, and what living there means to us. Next slide. According to Burley Allen, the ideal communication model is not linear but circular, page 152. And it is important to recognize that communication is not as simple as a straight line, and we do communicate in somewhat circular fashion. Next slide. It is a rite of passage that sends messages from the talker to the listener and allows the listener to respond. If we think about it, we more or less do communicate in a somewhat circular fashion. You might say something, I may say something, then the messages are transferred, and then it allows you to hear what I have said and myself to hear what you have said, and then allows for feedback or response to come later. Next slide. The overarching goal. My overarching goal is to develop the necessary skills that will increase my listening ability both interactively and empathetically, to generate relationships that are connective and meaningful, to utilize the principles of God's Word in my everyday life as I communicate with others. Next slide. Background information. I'm 46 years old. I've been married for 23 years and together with my husband for 25 years. I'm a graduate in the field of psychology, and I worked in the field for 25 years. And I grew up in a two-parent household, of which both parents are still married 46 years later. Next slide. My grandparents were married for 65 years, and letting you know that I have strong family ties to, as far as family is concerned, and that I'm working on my master's degree in human services counseling with a concentration on life coaching. My behavioral blend. Next slide. My behavioral blend was rather puzzling as well as defining, or at some points rang close to home. My behavioral blend was that of, this is expected of me, S and C, and these were some of the true points. People expect me to be submissive and stable, and people want me to be cautious. Next slide. They also viewed me as laid back and calm. People think I'm a good friend. People think I am assertive and not bossy. And people also saw that I'm not a seeker of attention. And this is me, which is the S and C or CNS, more reserved than outgoing. I'm sorry, I scooted up once too quick. People person, and preferring to be one-on-one than rather than in a group. Next slide. I'm a great friend and a loyal listener, compliant and obeys the rules, nervous about making moves without sufficient information. And this is very true of me, because if I don't know the end result, more or less, I get real nervous. Like everything to be organized and in place. I want to serve with wisdom and knowledge, passionate about being loyal and supporting others. Next slide. Defining the barriers. After reviewing the material in this course, I noted that there were a few barriers that I found was getting in my way of me being able to communicate effectively with others. Identifying the barriers. Problem one, Inhaling. The perception, where I focus my attention on certain cues, where I decide which are more important. Solution number 1 is to not be narrow-minded and limited in my vision and perception so that I may grasp the full picture. Next slide. Identifying barriers. Number 2, carefully coming up with the impression formation, craftfully coming up with the impression formation that may or may not be true, based simply on what was seen and or heard. Basically, the solution to this is to allow a relationship to begin to form, one in which I allow the full person to be known for who they truly are and not what I see or hear, eliminating the possibility for any snap judgments or stereotyping. Next slide. Problem number 3, as a listener, not being specifically empathetic. My solution, allow myself to feel for someone else and not minimizing their concerns, and allow myself to be able to put myself in their shoes. Next slide. Skills for improving listening. Acknowledge by using words, tone, and body language. Repeat accurately by using the same words to express what was heard by the talker. Using parafeeling, where I put into my own words how the talker was feeling, alternating feelings and thoughts by not staying focused on their thoughts and their feelings. Using both hands to let the talker know I understand that his feelings are mixed. Playing detective, which is where that compiles and supports and organizes the information that is received. Next slide. Basically, things within you that may be able to control as far as internal noise pollution. Internal noise pollution, basically not really listening, hearing what you said instead of what was actually said. Also, biased listening. You basically already told yourself that he or she was not worth listening to, and you basically play it out. Next slide. External noise pollution. There are things that you may not be able to control, such as loud noises in the background, conversations going on at the same time, interruptions, and fidgeting. Basically, these things draw attention away from the talker, making it that much harder to hear what the talker is trying to say. Next slide. The action plan. If I am going to be successful in the communication process, I need to make sure that I utilize mindfulness, empathetic listening, and allowing God to direct my path. I can be successful in the communication process by allowing myself to be mindful of the messages that can be transmitted by verbal and nonverbal, and following the path that takes on the proverbial, what would Jesus do? If we all asked ourselves that question on a regular basis, we would be able to utilize the path that is before us and making good judgments ahead. Next slide is my reference slide, and you'll find here that I've listed all the references for the bibliography that I had used in constructing this video. Thank you for listening.